Welcome. I just want to take you to the notion of cities around us, because this is probably one of the largest gathering of city stakeholders. We come here to talk about our cities, but most importantly, the future of our cities. If I can get my presentation, I will just go through the presentation, please. And in cities, what we are finding more and more, the people are increasing. If we look at the notion of people in our cities, it's very clear we need to address the problem, people, place, and what the future cities are going to look like. We have more than 50% of the humanity living in our cities today. If you take this humanity and more than 50% population and put it in less than 4% of the total area of this planet, you begin to realize the complexity of this problem. As we move forward, these challenges in the cities are only increasing. And more we find in our cities, there is a real battle happening on the public spaces. There's a real battle happening because people, by and large, in majority of city, losing out the most essential asset public has got, that is their public space. It's reducing, and the evidence is mainly from the developing countries that that's exponentially reducing, and more spaces are going away from people into the road networks, physical infrastructure, but most importantly, something drastic happening in our cities, that cars are taking over a lot of our cities. Cars does something very critical in our cities. They connect people, they connect communities, but they connect something very important element in our cities, that is the mobility of the economy of the mobility. They fulfill a purpose, but they also beginning to take over a larger part of our cities. The benefit, one can argue, is very limited to few people in the cities, and if we look at the trend which is happening, and again in the developing cities context, that trend seems to be making a very dangerous propositions, that in less than 50 years' time, we are going to have very limited public spaces available for our people in our cities. I welcome you to this session, and this session brings something very unique. It gives us an opportunity, by way of some of the practical applications cities has applied to reduce the dependence on the cars. They have taken political decisions to give the public space to the people, but something unique is in this session, that majority of the people who are working and delivering this thing and going to explore and debate and discuss some of these options are all women. And I'm very proud to say, in my last 12 years of working and moderating and facilitating number of sessions about cities, and we feel very proud to say the equity, the discussion about equity, discussion about the gender balance are important for our cities. But it's the first time I had an opportunity in last 12 years to moderate a session which is 100% women. So I want to thank all of you for participating. My name is Sunil Dubey. I come from Sydney in Australia. Our roads are not very bicycle friendly. We don't have a culture of cyclists feeling safe on our cities. It's destroying the communities. In fact, is making life very hard for young children and elderly people. Our first speaker has gone through some journeys like this. As a young professional, Irene and her husband moved to the city of Singapore. And Singapore did not provide, one can argue even still today, very safe road networks for the cyclist. So what do you do when you're a young professional and you want to change something about the safety? You actually start to work and say, how can we make the difference in making cyclists safe on our cities? I want to invite Irene to share some of her story and what compelled them to in fact focus on making cyclists safe on our roads. Irene.
Thank you for that introduction. So, I think I've lost the screen. Sorry.
Presentation?
This one here.
Yes.
So, I press down to.
Yes, yes. Yes.
So, as Sunil mentioned, we believe firmly that cities need more cycling. Our cities are broken, they're congested, they're polluted, and they face serious resource challenges. And more cities around the world are starting to recognise that having more cyclists in the modal share of transport is a better way to help address some of those issues. But as Sunil quite rightly pointed out, one of the biggest barriers for that to happen is actually the perception of safety. This statistic comes from the UK, a cycling attitudes survey. 59% of people don't feel safe cycling. And so we think that if cities are going to address this and get more people cycling, this is definitely an area that must be tackled. Theft is also another issue. So cyclists cycling to work want to know that their bike is going to be there when they come back at the end of the day. Thinking about cities who want to reduce some of those barriers for cycling, one of the best ways to improve safety is to create better infrastructure. But to deploy that infrastructure across the city has costs associated to it, and cities do need better data to help them inform how to make those investments most efficiently across the city. Where data currently exists, there are things such as like cameras on street poles and things like that, but these are difficult to deploy and expensive to maintain once they're out there. Other data sets that exist, historical data, for example, reports on collisions can be up to 2 years old, and surveys and the like just simply aren't getting to the timeliness of the data that's needed, nor providing the range of data that the planners need to make effective decisions. So it was actually in Singapore, as Sunil mentioned, that we my husband and I, after moving from London and living in Singapore, we felt that just being on the roads there was maybe even a bit more dangerous, and it's probably just because there were less cyclists there, and cyclists and road drivers were even less used to navigating around cyclists and giving us space. My husband originally trained as an electronic and software engineer, and it was literally as he was cycling to work one day that he had the bright idea when he looked at his smartphone and thought, well, what if I could take the sensor technology inside my mobile phone and integrate it into a bicycle light? The bicycle light then has The sensor technology inside the light is allowing the light to understand its environment. It knows where it is, it knows if it's at a roundabout, a road junction, filtering in traffic, or to approaching car headlights from behind. And the sensor technology reacts, giving daylight visible level of brightness to the cyclists, because most accidents are actually happening in daylight hours. 80% in fact in the UK are happening between 6 to 9 a.m. and 3 to 6 p.m. So the sensor technology has some great benefits for the cyclist in giving a daylight visible light that has a long battery life. But interestingly, there are also benefits for the city in terms of the data that this light is able to collect. So the light with dedicated sensors inside is scanning its environment 800 times a second. And this allows it to understand the road surface quality of the cyclist's experience as they're going over the roads. It also allows the light to detect a near-miss event and crashes in real time. For the cyclist, there are a number of connected features that come through by connecting to the app, such as a crash alert and a theft alert, and ability to get low battery notifications. And there's also a survey where cyclists can send information back through the app and let their city know about the issues that concern them in a very bottom-up way. The wonderful thing about the product is going from this idea that we had in Singapore, we've been able to build our company since 2013 from a husband and wife team up to a team of 17, now based in Northern Ireland, and it's all been done through the support of the cycling community. So we've done three Kickstarter crowdfunding campaigns now to launch the product. The last one that you see there, ACE, closed last week. Actually, it went on to raise £180,000 in a month and is the most backed bike light ever on Kickstarter. It led to quite a range of coverage that we've had out of this, and most excitingly, our product has been voted as the best bike gadget in the UK by RoadCC, which is the largest online community for cyclists, and was featured in the London Design Museum. But the really, really interesting thing is the data that this light can collect as it is going around. So I mentioned already to you the dedicated sensors inside the light. This allows us to generate real-time maps, journeys that cyclists are taking, showing speed, braking, and dwell times. It also allows you to map collisions and near-miss events, which is fantastic for planners to be able to say, let's not wait until there's an accident on this roundabout to know that it's a dangerous roundabout. We can use the data to make a prediction based on the patterns that we've seen through the data indicating that near misses are happening there. Similarly with road surface, there are benefits to the cyclists because they want to cycle on relatively smooth, safer roads, but also there's benefit for the city as well because understanding road quality allows better proactive road maintenance. So if you can get out there and actually repair a road early before the pothole has formed, it is cheaper to do so for the city. So there's a wonderful benefit there for the city as well in terms of the data going beyond immediate applications for the cyclist and into broader applications for the city. We're already now working with cities in Dublin, Manchester and Belfast. In Dublin and Manchester, we've deployed these lights. There are 500 lights that have gone out across Dublin, 200 in Manchester, and in Belfast, we've actually integrated our technology inside the city bike scheme. This now enables them to start generating some data. This was on the first day in Manchester. Here's some imageries of the heat maps that have been identified showing the dwell times. And here's some user perception stuff that's come in where we're able to do analysis of frequently used words and themes and plot those against the city. The city bike integration I mentioned is a world first in that we're using LoRaWAN technology, which is a low-powered wide area network specifically built for IoT. And this allows us to zap the data straight from the bike and into the cloud. It's a modular platform allowing additional features to be added over time, and we're currently working on pollution sensing to be added to those bikes. It's a collaborative project with universities, and the exciting thing is that once you have that data, you can start to mix it up with other open data sets and other data that's available in the city, leading to services such as mobility as a service, and a wonderful ability to get the citizen engagement that you need by the bottom-up contribution of data from cyclists. So what makes us different? I think at the end of the day, we are accompanied by cyclists and for cyclists. We're extremely motivated to see the cities use the data, use the insights that are generated from the data, and our community feel very passionate about being co-creators as part of the journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you. And I would highly encourage if you had an opportunity to interact with Irene. And we see how a technology or something which came out of purely from need of the safety turned up into a reasonable sized company. I must say that you increased from a couple to a 17 people team is a remarkable journey. But let's look at the other side of the spectrum. Let's look at a nation comes and put a strong policy of zero car growth. Sounds very easy. We can start to think about it implementing in the cities. The political motive, the economic motive, the business motives are the first hurdle. Now imagine applying zero car in your cities. Where do you start? Which one do you stop? Do you stop the new cars? Do you get rid of all the automobiles on your streets? But Norway has implemented this zero car growth as a part of their national policy. City of Oslo is in fact doing this on a day-to-day basis, but they're doing something very special. The cars are not only representing a need for people to move from one place to another place. Cars are also becoming a bit of a hazard. And the best way the city of Oslo has decided to look at this issue and the challenge by bringing children into the play of the policies. How children play an important role in redefining how the traffic and the transport planning can be done or improved is an excellent example which is going to be presented by our colleagues from Oslo. We are trying to resolve some of this interface problem between Apple and Mac and Mac and Windows, but I believe the systems are working now. So I want to welcome Tina and Britt-Ida, who are here from Oslo, and they want to share the role of children in redefining the way of transport and safety in our cities. Over to you.
Thank you. So, there's no sound here. We need sound. This is sound, is okay? Yeah? Because we're just trying. Oh, yeah.
This is headquarters. We need you to spy. Are you ready, agent? Enter your secret agent code and press login. Choose between green or red thumb to report. Keep your eyes on the road. Way to go! Select one of the spy codes. Amazing spying! Once more, select one of the spy codes and press send report. Keep up the good work. Thanks. Your investigation report has been received. We appreciate your investigation.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for the introduction. My name is Tina, and this is my colleague Britt-Ida, and we are here from the city of Oslo to talk about the traffic agent, which, as you just saw from the video, it is an app, but it's also a mapping tool for us as mobility planners in Oslo. And to begin with, I just want to talk a little bit about the background for why the traffic agent was developed. And first of all, it was developed so that the children could help us to map and identify the need for traffic security measures on school routes in Oslo. And the reason why we wanted to do this is because we wanted to be able to increase the numbers of children walking, biking, or who's traveling by public transportation to school. And at least we are convinced that to be able to succeed with increasing those numbers, the children and their parents need to feel that the routes are safe to travel. And the reason why we are so engaged with this is, well, obviously it is the environmental benefits that comes along with those sorts of travel habits, but it's also, as a municipality, we want to facilitate to help the children into developing healthy travel habits from an early age. And actually in Norway, as Sunil just talked a little bit about, we actually have a really ambitious zero growth vision in our national transport plan, which states that all increase in transportation shall be done by walking, cycling, or by public transportation, and that there should be zero growth in cars for the following years. And of course, for us as mobility planners, this is really a huge challenge, but it's also really inspiring because it forces us into a whole different way of mindset than we have had traditionally. So of course, the city of Oslo, as the capital of Norway, want to do our part to be able to realize that vision. And I mean, if that wasn't enough, actually the children in Norway have by law a statutory right to have a say in public planning processes that might involve or affect them in any way. And actually for us as a municipality, we are also obliged to facilitate for them to be able to do so in a way that fits them. So I've told you a little bit about the background. I told you a little bit about the background, and I will just jump straight to what the traffic agent is. So like I said in the beginning, it is an app which is universally designed, where we have used gamification to be able to engage the children into taking an active part in transport planning and mobility planning. And the whole idea behind the app is that they are secret agents reporting to us as the local authorities on issues that regards traffic security or traffic safety on their routes to school. And what we get in return, well, this is why we call it a mapping tool. It's a map like this, and as you can see, it's really visual. You can see from the colored lines, those are the routes that the children use, and it's really easy for us to see from the clusters of green and red thumbs where they feel safe and areas where that they find challenging. And also, if we press one of the thumbs, we can dive deeper into why they have reported what they have. So here you can see a child walking with an adult, and the issue here is that they want to cross the street, but there's a lot of traffic, and the comment they have given indicates that they wish that there were traffic lights there, and they have also sent us a photo of that crossing that they find challenging. So I've told you a little bit about the background and how it works, and my colleague, Britt-Ida, is going to talk more about the benefits and how we can use this in our daily work as traffic planners.
Thank you. And the benefits for us that the children are using the traffic agent is that we get their immediate impression of what they find positive or challenging on their way to school. And they give us exact information that helps us they gives us exact information about when and where the problem is and what has happened. And by crowdsourcing in this way, we can collect big data. And as you could see, it's a very visual map. So it allows us to map larger areas and to prioritize measures in a more fair and hopefully a better way than before. And we found that really cool. And we just take a quick look at two of the measures we have done based on the children's reports. And this is from a child who experienced visibility challenges because of disc bushes when he was crossing the road to his school. And as you can see on the after picture, this is a big change. And and it's also a very visible measure. And on this kind of measures, we can react quickly because this is a task we are already doing. But the children are telling us when and where it's needed. And since we can react quickly, the children still remember that they have reported this to us. So this means those kind of measures are really important because this shows the children that we are listening to them. And we hope that this is a way to build trust between the children and us as a local authority. And from the next measure we had done, this was a big junction, and as you can see, it's huge with a long crossing. And this is like a grown-up, so you can imagine how a child feels when they are crossing here. So it was so big that even trucks could take a U-turn, and it was a problem with speeding. So we tied up the junction, so now the crossing are safer and shorter for the children, and also the cars needs to slow down. So this is just two of many measures we have done based on the children's reports. And it's also important to say that we aren't only using the children's reports in traffic planning, but also in other planning processes to ensure that the children's safety and needs and voice have been taken into account. So since the launch of the app in 2015, we have now 75 active schools. We got almost 9,000 reports, and also now 2 new other Norwegian municipalities have started up. So we are very excited about the future and are looking forward. So I want to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. I think it's very interesting to hear how the traffic agents are playing such an important role. But when you think about the participation from the young children where they feel an integral part of the planning process, I think that's far more important for us to say we are in fact investing into getting some comments and some valuable information from the young people. Often we hear that smaller cities can achieve a lot of bike laneways, they can implement change to give public spaces back to the people. Citizens can enjoy more benefits if you're sitting in, if you are in small cities. But big cities are doing a lot of changes. By and large, when we look at the mega cities of the world, or major cities over 1 million inhabitants, the pattern is anything between 60 to 80% of your total public spaces in the cities are taken over by roads. So roads are very important. The notion of democracy on the roads are even more important for us to realize that the most vulnerable people in our society must have equal rights on these roads. Children, elderly people, disabled people. So what bike is giving to us a real sense of having a right from every citizen on their cities. City of London is not a small city. It takes a lot of political courage to in fact implement a vision like having public access to more than 60 to 80% of your road networks, having bike laneways within the 400 meters of access to the people. So by 2040, the Mayor of London has put this vision, and we are very lucky to hear that how big cities are really taking the notion of democracy through their roads and giving right and voice to the people by implementing these changes. These are not easier challenges. The political will required to do these things are very complex. People end up losing their elections, people end up losing their political careers. So we need to understand that this kind of notion and bringing the democracy back to the roads are important. I want to invite Claudia And Claudia's journey is very interesting because she said to me that what she has learned in her professional career is moving from the developing to the developed world via Barcelona. In terms that Claudia was born in Venezuela and she lived there, studied in Barcelona, and now Claudia is applying a lot of these policies in a planning in major city of London. And we are very keen to hear and share how you are convincing the mayors to do these things and endorse it. Over to you, Claudia.
Thank you. Good afternoon. What I'm going to present is how I think London has become smarter in terms of planning infrastructure. And I will argue that that smartness comes from finally producing a strategic spatial plan to develop the cycling network. And that spatial analysis allows us to understand where to invest next, where we would get the highest returns, and that in terms of the cycling network means where we would get more people cycling. But it also allows us to identify the wider benefits of the cycling network and what other goals, overarching goals that the mayor has for the city can also be achieved with help from the cycling network. So wider benefits as well as the specific benefits. And so the policy context is that London has a new mayor's transport strategy. Each new mayor issues their transport strategy. Ours is in consultation at the moment. And there has been an interesting switch because now the emphasis is a lot in public health. And one of the views that the mayor wants to achieve, an aspiration that it has, is for Londoners to be healthier, for streets to be healthier as well. And that means that the targets are, for instance, for all Londoners to do 20 minutes of physical activity each day, but by 2041. And that 80% of Londoners use public transport, for instance, by 2041. Something that is interesting is that in this strategy, it was also included a spatial target, and this is because of the work that I've done with the help of, obviously, a zillion of people within Transport for London. But that spatial target is the one that was mentioned before, which is that 70% of Londoners should have access to a strategic cycle network, and that means living within 400 meters or less from this core network. And so when I joined the organization, we had the picture on the right shows the cycling infrastructure that was developed by Transport for London. And on the left is what was planned for the next 5 years. We have business plans that last 5 years. But there wasn't anything more. There wasn't a longer-term aspiration that we wanted to achieve. And that's what I'm going to present. With this aspiration of producing a spatial plan, a spatial strategy for developing the cycling network, I obviously started by looking at international best practice, and I found out that very few cities in the world actually have a spatial strategy for developing their networks. And certainly no city of the size of London, with 8.5 million people, has one. I found that Seattle has an amazing document called Bicycle Master Plan. Boston has a very interesting document as well, and some other cities like Portland, etc. But obviously, the Barcelona Mobility Plan was a great influence in the work that I developed because it's a great plan, really. And so this is what I produced. It's called Strategic Cycling Analysis, and it was published on our website in summer, so in June. So if you want to download it, I also have some copies that I made. And what it does is that it identifies a core cycling network, which is the network that would bring the biggest benefits in terms of more people cycling, the network that would serve the biggest amount of current and future demand. But it also identifies where that network can help achieve other of the mayoral goals, such as people doing more physical activity, more people walking, road danger reduction, which is one of the other goals as well, public transport interchange, multimodal interchanges, and obviously supporting homes, new homes and jobs. London is a city that is growing fast, and another target is to do so sustainably. I'm going to go very quickly through some of the data sets that we used for designing this spatial strategy. But if you want to know more details about the data sets, you can grab me afterwards and I can expand a bit on them. So this is a picture of where people cycle now in London. I took the top 20% of the road network in terms of cycle flows. So those streets that had the highest cycle flows in London. And that's what it shows. The top 20% of roads for cycling are those. As you can see, it's concentrated in central London, and there's a bit that expands towards inner London. But this is a more interesting picture. This is a picture of where people would cycle if they were to switch short trips that are now mostly done using private cars to cycles. These are trips that would take less than half an hour by bike, and that we call, there's a specific analysis behind this, which is called analysis of cycling potential, which is also on our website and can be downloaded. But this picture shows how outer London is also lit up, because there's a lot of potential for switching these short trips to cycling. So I overlap the two data sets. Where are people cycling now? Where would people cycle if they were to switch? And our 5-year plan. And that allowed me to identify the gaps left by our current plans. And then this is the picture of what we call the strategic cycle network for London. It's an optimal network. And as you can see, it's done through using straight lines, because obviously this is a strategic plan, and we are not telling the detail about where cycling infrastructure has to be or which specific road is going to be end up part of this core network. What we have identified is the places that need to be connected, and then how those connections are realized or delivered obviously need to be done in conjunction with the 33 local authorities that manage the streets of London. And this network is a network that would serve at least 70% of Londoners. That would mean that 70% of the population would live within 400 meters or less from this core network. So in order to help the production of shorter term action plans, because that was the aspiration, a long-term aspiration, but how do we get there? We also looked in more detail at the same data sets that I explained before, but also, and this was to prioritize the network. But most importantly, we looked at population and employment growth in order to identify the places with the most important for economic activity and where growth is expected, in order to put that into the prioritization process and make sure that that we support sustainable growth. And this is the picture of the network prioritized, with red lines showing the most important, the biggest priorities in London. To finalize, this is the last slide almost, and it shows this other spatial analysis that we did, showing how that cycle network can help realize other benefits. And it shows how the places where it can help road danger reduction, where it can help, it can improve the environment for walking, and where multimodal interchange could be enabled. It's also very important that it identifies where bus demand and cycle demand coincide, and then that means that we know where private car reduction is more important for these sustainable corridors. And this is how it's being used. This analysis is being used to plan the network, yes, but also it's also being incorporated in urban plans for growth areas. And finally, on the new mayor's transport strategy, which is how I started the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudia, and congratulations. I think that is a very ambitious plan, and I'm quite sure every journey matters, especially in your cities. The two things are very important in our inner city planning, transport plannings. Number one, not how many bike lanes we are producing or doing in our cities, but how many cars we are able to take off from our roads. Number two, despite all the arguments, discussions about the need for infrastructure, pedestrians and cyclists has to play a role of kings on our roads. If we do this successfully, I think we're going to see a lot more sustainability and access to public spaces to the people. I invite our next and the host city speaker, Sílvia, to tell us how Barcelona is effectively doing this. As we speak, number of implementations are going on, which you can witness it and listen through Claudia's presentation.
Yeah, I
Over
think
to
we've
you.
got a few minutes just because we also need to get some
No problem.
time for
Let's
them.
keep going.
So I really will
Thank
try
you.
to go fast. Well, I'm going to talk for a few minutes about cycling challenges from a metropolitan point of view, from the Barcelona metropolitan point of view. Just the context, this is Barcelona in the context of Catalonia, metropolitan area from Barcelona. We've got 43% of population, so 3.2 million, but just in 2% of the territory. So this is a very high dense territory. But the population is distributed in a different way. You can see in Barcelona we've got 50% of this population, 1.6 million, and then there's another million just next to Barcelona, linking with the next municipalities. But then we also have got very small municipalities with less than 10,000 inhabitants, some of them high up the mountain. So mobility patterns also differ very much among all these municipalities. But our distances are very short, mostly under 8 kilometers maximum. From Barcelona to all the metropolitan area, we've got a radio of 30 kilometers maximum. So yeah, distances are very short. So yeah, it's possible to cycle mainly. This is our current cycling network. It's 1,500 kilometers. Half of them it's in the city of Barcelona. But you can see we've got several spots. The red lines are the bike lanes, and the yellow ones are the traffic calm streets. But we miss a connection among all these infrastructure. So 2 years ago we sat down with we've got 36 municipalities. We sat down with all of us, and then we tried to draw a map connecting all our municipalities, the urban areas, and also the industrial and economic districts. We had this map. We drew this map of more than 500 kilometers, and then we also got meetings with the province government, the Catalan government, and the Spanish government, which also own part of this area. And yeah, and then we draw what we call the BCVia. There was a political agreement 1.5 years ago, and yeah, and now we are starting to implement it. From the metropolitan area, we fund partially these investments for infrastructure, and these are the projects from last year that we are building them now. And this year again, we are funding another project. It's like 40 kilometers per year. So we really hope within 10 years we can have this network completely ready. I didn't mention, but some 25% of this network is already existing. Just to show, this is a quite ugly connection, but it's very important for us because it's connecting Barcelona city with the industrial area, the one that is the biggest one in Catalonia, Zona Franca. And we just opened this connection in last summer together with the municipality of Barcelona. And you can see we are taking away, of course, space from the car, and we also give some sidewalk for pedestrians, because it's amazing. But there was no way to connect from the city to the industrial area. I wanted to use the word smart because this is about a smart session. Well, just to show that we put some red lights that have a green wave for the cyclists, and also, of course, sensors to count how many cyclists are passing by. This is a second very important connection from Barcelona to south, to Baix Llobregat. It's now more developed, but yeah, it should be ready already, but we are building quite slowly, also because we are building together with the municipalities, and each municipality has its own rules and wherever. But in a few weeks, this connection will be ready, and it was also impossible to cross this place in a safe way. So the first challenge I was talking about, it's we had to put together these 36 municipalities and really agree with a common map. But the second challenge, it's very important that the mayors and all the politicians are brave, because taking, of course, we want to, I didn't mention, but we are building the bike lanes on the, not on the sidewalks anymore. So we are taking away space from cars, which means we are removing car parking lanes, and we are removing driving lanes. So people, when you touch a car park, it means like you are really touching a very important right. So this was just to show in my neighborhood a new bike lane. Just in a Facebook group, it's really creating a big fights among all the inhabitants to protect or to their car park. So it's always a big mess for politicians to try to fight to take away space, to remove some space from the car. And a third challenge, we have to, we are making several different actions, but what we really have to provocate, it's an individual behavior change. So we really have to show to each person that it's, that using the bike, it's easier, it's more convenient than using the car. So we've got a special campaign for companies to convince the employees to use the bike, and we are offering them e-bikes for free during 6 months, because we really think the e-bike can be really, it can make the big change. This is our bike parking in the metropolitan area, which is located in this industrial area I was mentioning. So, well, it's not that bad. I mean, we are having every time more and more bikes. And just to finish, maybe someone in the room knows where is this picture? In Barcelona somewhere? Well, this is in my neighborhood. I'm lucky because I live in what is called the super block in Poblenou. And I'm just in the middle of the street with my family here. This is the same picture, or the same image. This used to be just for cars. This is just a normal crossing, like in Barcelona, in Eixample. But 1 year ago, the municipality decided, okay, let's give some a small space for the cars, but let's take the rest for people. And 1 year later, we've got this playground here in the middle of the street. So I think that the smartest policy, it's about removing the space for cars and giving it back to pedestrians and bikes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudia. Sílvia, so my apologies. Sílvia, thank you. We have a very limited time, and I really want to get the floor to you. And please throw the questions from technology, from planning, from policy, from city gentlemen there. Please, sir. Please introduce yourself briefly. And
my name is Santo from Tel Aviv-based Human Sustainability. And my question is to Sílvia and to, sorry?
Claudia.
Sorry, thank you. It's about cycle logistics. One of the issues is not just getting the cyclists and the cars away, but also the polluting delivery trucks that are clogging the streets and blocking the sidewalks. What are the policies about cycle logistics? Incentivizing business owners to move to cycle logistics.
This is not working. Oh, it's working now. Obviously, any attempt to put people on bikes and move them away from polluting vehicles needs to come with a wider set of strategies. So one, for instance, for freight, we are trialing in some commercial streets timed freight deliveries. For instance, we need to also incentivize companies to do the last mile in a sustainable way. But also, for instance, London has a congestion charge, so it needs to come with a wider set of policies. It can never only be about providing cycling lanes and then just it. It needs to be, as you very well say, about how do we reduce motorized vehicles with the different strategies that require each of those essential trips. For instance, freight. I don't know if you want to add.
Well, just in Barcelona, there are some companies that operate already just by cargo bikes, but I know it's quite hard for them. That they get some funding or some help from the municipality in the beginning, also from European projects, and now they operate from also public basements. It's the government is giving them some space kind of for free to really help them, because it means it's not easy that companies want to pay more for the delivery, so that's it's difficult.
Thank you, Sílvia. Are there any other questions from the floor? If I may, this one question in the front, sir, please.
Hi, I'm Pablo Valerio from Cities of the Future, publication here about the smart cities. I just wanted to comment and ask you a question, especially for the people of Norway, because last year I actually had a conversation with your mayor about her plans to reduce the number of cars in the city, and how, you know, this planning and charges that they're using right now is been helping to reduce traffic. But at the same time, when you're looking at how people take children to school and the way that you are using your app and your technology to identify the challenges of basically school children to go to school on their own, how is that thing changing the behavior of parents? If it's something in Norway that basically is the usual thing is like parents take their children to school by cars initially, and is that any kind of mentality change right now that from a certain age they are willing to let their kids go into school more than before?
Oh. Thank you. Excellent question, Pablo. Thank you.
Well, of course, the parents are maybe driving the children because it's more practical, because they're going straight to work after. But they actually have like groups that they are following each other's kids to school. So I think that it's still new, but I think that to show them that we are listening to them and are focusing on children, we hope that they soon can leave the car alone, and children can walk or cycle themselves to go there.
Well, also what we have experienced from the traffic agent is actually that the children feels that the most unsafe area on their school routes is the parking lot at school, because the parents kind of change their behavior as soon as their kid has went into the gates. Then they back the car backwards, and they're not really paying attention to other kids. So we are actually also trying to inform them about this, that this is actually one of the worst areas on the school routes, and that is because you are driving the kids to school. So please don't do that. Sort of, yeah. We're trying to inform them about this because they are not aware of this themselves. So, but yeah.
Good. Thank
So
you, Tina.
If that answers
I'm going to pick up some questions from the online, if it's okay. And very quick question for you, Claudia. How long is the average travel time by cycling in London? What's the average time you're getting from the cyclists in London?
I don't know the answer, but if interrogating the models, there's a lot of variability. There are a lot of commuters that go from the outer parts of London into central London to work, and those are willing to cycle much more than the 8 kilometers that we put as a median when we talk about switchable trips. There are people making 10 kilometers, 12, and even 15, and these are the typical men in Lycra that work in the city of London. But there is a lot of short trips that start in a train station, in a termini train station in central London, and then people grab Cycle Hire, for instance, which is a cycle bike share system, to do the last part of their trip. So I wouldn't know what the median is, but there's a lot of variability between these very short trips and the longer ones. What we want to achieve is to normalize cycling, and therefore we consider this sort of half an hour trip, because what we want is this wide variability of this wider nature of trips.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask one question again from the online. And Irene, I may ask you this question. Would the panel agree if we design cities that is wheelchair friendly, that it will then be friendly to children, elderly, pedestrian, and all abilities? What's your view about it? That if we start to design roads, Irene, this is to you. Yes. So I just want to see what the technology is going to play the role, because often disabled people, and do you see a plan ahead?
I guess planning for, I'm not an expert in planning for wheelchair, I have to say, but I'm guessing that, one thing that you would need to take into account is the quality of the road surface. You wouldn't want the road surface to be too uneven, and you would need significant space, and you would need the road, you would need to be segregated, I would think, from traffic. Generally. So, yeah, I think the principles seem sound.
Wonderful. Claudia, would you like to comment? Because this is a very good question.
For wheelchairs, no?
Wheelchairs.
Well, I'm guessing. I think it's a good strategy for improving the footpaths. But we need strategies for traffic lanes, also for the road itself as well. We need to diminish the volume of traffic and reduce the speeds of traffic. Even if we have the best sidewalk ever, we still need to reduce traffic and reduce flows on the road.
Well, thank you. I just want to take the time to thank all of you, especially for this late afternoon session. I'm sorry, because of the limitation of the time, we must stop our session. Let you go and enjoy the afternoon or the evening in Barcelona. And I just want to encourage you to please get in contact with the speakers, the work they are doing, and look at the sharing, the bike, the public spaces as a serious matter for our cities. The more roads, the more cars are not going to solve any problem for us. We do have to take a collective effort, whether as politicians, designers, planners, or ordinary citizens, to ensure the bikes become an integral part of our cities, and this has got a direct relationship on making a city which is about people, about planning, but most importantly, it's about future. Thank you very much for coming to our session. I want to thank all the speakers to sharing wonderful knowledge and some of the important work you're doing in your cities. So thank you.